We have made it to part 2 of our story, The Mouse with the Question Mark Tail. And part 2 is called The Royal Park. Here's the picture. And it starts with chapter 5, Peg's Ear. I dreamed I was late for school and woke to the hot breath of the horse. Though I'd grazed off and on all night long, I didn't know where I was, but my belly was pleasantly round. Gray day was beginning to dawn, and the cat had already vanished. The groom's housekeeper put down a saucer of milk for her. "Burrow a little deeper in the straw," the horse said confidentially, "and mind your tail. The stable hands will soon be round to muck out. I'll give the first one a good swift kick just to let him know who's boss. I'll send him sailing, but then I'll let them groom me. I like that. Mind you stay under the straw. I'll see to it they don't mess about with the manger." I lurked low as the humans went about their morning stables business. After they picked up the stable hand who'd been kicked out into the courtyard, they polished brass and cleaned the exercise harness. One of them stood too near to be kicked and trimmed the horse's heels. I supposed that once he'd been groomed, they'd throw a saddle on him to be exercised. Then I could slip quietly off. But where? Finally, the stable hands clumped back to their quarters to change into their riding gear. "Up you come," said the horse. I surfaced there at the end of his nose, my ears scooping straw. "No sugar lump?" he asked in his loose-lipped way. "Not to worry, the world's full of them if you keep your eyes open and your nose to the wind. We'll be going out for a turn in the park today, just a quick canter. Only a bit of a trot and a stretch before tomorrow and the main event." "We?" "Time you saw a bit of the world, if you're to find your place in it," the horse said. "Nobody ever learned who he was by staying in the stable." Who knew a horse had such deep thoughts? And he whinnied less than the cat. They'd given him fresh water, and he sprayed me as he spoke. "Scamper up my face and turn north at the eye. Ride in that ear. You'll just about fit, like a cork in a bottle." I gaped. I was hip deep in a manger and stuck all over with oats and bits of straw, and a horse was inviting me to ride in his ear? "Step lively and show a pair of heels," he said. "The grooms will be here any minute, and mind you hang on for dear life. I'm apt to flick my ears. It's a thing you do, certainly in fly time, and if there's a young filly about. No, not that ear, the other one. I'm a bit deaf in that ear, so if you stop it up, it won't matter much. And we won't speak again after I take the bit. Some of the grooms are brighter than they look. Just wedge yourself in and keep your wits about you." His name was Pegasus, Peg for short. They'd nailed the name on a board above his stall. He'd let them throw a bridle and a saddle on him. Now he glittered in bright brass work. He was blinkered. A worried groom sat carefully astride him, and I sat in his ear. It was waxy in there. I slipped and slid before I found my feet. It took all my bravery. I was a mile off the ground. Now we turned to the gate, along with the other horses and riders. Peg led, and his groom had nothing to say in the matter. Out we trotted under the clock tower in a river of grey and bay horseflesh into the Buckingham Palace Road. Fog was just burning off a London morning. I cowered in Peg's slick ear. The Buckingham Palace Road was tangled with hackney coaches and broughams and a thundering great brewer's wagon. Omnibuses, top-heavy with humans, swayed past. Harnesses jingled. The whole of London smelled oddly like Fitzherbert. Death beckoned from every gutter and loitered at every turn under the boots and the hoofs. Humans darted across the traffic. The road sweepers were slapping mud and manure from one side of the road to the other with stumpy brooms. One flick of Peg's ear, and I'd be down in the mire myself, being swept up. We turned past the grand front of Buckingham Palace. The Queen's own soldiers were just falling in for the changing of the guard, bright red and bristling with bayonets. Beavers on their heads, their boots polished to mirrors. My eyes were out on stalks to take it all in. I began to look a bit ahead. If I could just hang on in Peg's ear a day and a night, if I could stop his ear and eat his food till he was hitched up to the Queen's landau, I might just find my way to the Queen herself, somehow. In her infinite wisdom, perhaps she could give me a clue or two about who I was and who I was to be. Worth a try, I thought. I was young. I believed anything could happen. Around the far side of the palace, we started up the broad avenue of Constitution Hill. Ahead was the green blur of Hyde Park we'd learned in geography class. But I wasn't fated to see it for myself that brightening morning. Oh, no. Now we were high-stepping along the wall of Buckingham Palace's back garden, through a leafy tunnel of trees. I'd never seen an entire tree before, only the odd leaves scudding into the Mews courtyard. The trees sighed in the morning breeze and were very fine, except for the squirrels. Great ugly things stuck like leeches to the tree bark, some of them upside down. Their tails were bushy and flicky, and their heads bullet-shaped. Tree rats, really. Mean eyes. I shrank in Peg's ear, but kept an eye out. Tweedy ladies and tailored gentlemen rode sleek horses up and down Constitution Hill. All very well turned out, humans and horses alike, though none of them a patch on Peg. Coming our way from the park was a lady riding aside on a fine young chestnut filly. The breeze played in the lady's veils. The morning caught all the lights in the filly's coat, very dainty for a horse. She nodded to left and to right. There was a high polish on her hoofs. A quiver of pure electricity shot through Peg. A moment too late, I lunged for the stubble edge of his ear. The beauteous filly was just passing us when his ear gave an almighty flick, and I rocketed through the thin air, completely uncorked and scudding like a leaf. My hands grabbed at the sky-blue morning. The wind screamed in my notched ears. My tail asked questions all over the air. Broken glass lined the top of the palace garden wall. I was almost ripped to shreds when, by the chance of a lifetime, I landed on a low-hanging tree branch instead. Scrambling, I found my balance, blind with fear and all these leaves. Below me, the horses of the Royal Mews clip-clopped on to the park, Peg naturally in the lead. "Wait!" cried out a tiny voice in my heart. "Wait!" Here's the picture. So this is Peg, or Pegasus, the horse that he's been hanging out with. And there he is up there. You can see his little question mark tail. And this is the horse that Peg saw that made him flick his ear. Let's see. It's kind of a long chapter. We'll finish it. I couldn't see an inch ahead for the leaves. I could be making straight for a squirrel. You don't know how it feels, being flicked out of a horse's ear into a fully leafed out tree. You have no idea. And how suddenly still it was up here, above everything, almost silent, except for a faint echoing cheep and a slight susurration, which is a word off of old Chiroptera's vocabulary list at school. You could look it up, 2 R's. It was better to keep moving. I skittered ahead from one tree tangled with the next. Nothing much seemed to be happening up here, bar the odd ladybug hunting aphids. But somehow I felt eyes upon me, though not for long, for I found myself on a limb too thin. It bent under my weight. I was full of oats, remember? The limb twanged, and once more I was in the air, with the wind singing in my ears. I lit in a bed of waxy begonias. I don't suppose begonias have ever broken your fall, but these broke mine. They were in an herbaceous border within the wall. The sound of the Constitution Hill traffic was faint and far off. I parted the begonias. I was as waxy as they were, but they were taller. Most things are. I peered out across the private parkland stretching behind Buckingham Palace. The long palace doors stood open to a vacant terrace. Nothing stirred in all this vast garden, with its acres of lawn and grove and lake. I hadn't known England itself was this big. Though it was in the heart of London, there was nothing of London about it. No smell of drains here, and only a little wisp of yellow fog drifting in. But this much open country stirs misgivings in a mouse. Birds wheeled high overhead and slid down the wind. With birds, you never know. You hear things about birds. Linnets will sing you a merry song. Other sorts snatch you up and drop you on a rock. And magpies will rob you blind. You just never know. There in the distance, a bunch of blackbirds were worming the lawn. 24 of them, perhaps, however many that might be. Down on all fours I moved among the begonias, nosing my way forward because there was nothing to go back to. I was in a little shady glade under a tree when I took one step too many. All at once, I was in the air again, dangling just clear off the ground. I hung, helpless, swaying in a net attached to a tree branch by a single silken thread. I knew this net. It was one of my aunt's. It was one my aunts had made for catching butterflies. Very strong, these nets. You don't get out of them in a hurry, or ever, if you're a butterfly. Unknown hands had rigged this butterfly net with a tripwire. It was trussed tight with my tail trapped, and in the next moment I was staring straight at another mouse. We were nearly nose to nose, though I was upside down. So this is him in the net right here, and this is the other mouse that caught him. It could have been worse. He might have been a squirrel who took me for an acorn, but no, he was clearly a mouse, and in full uniform, if you please. A scarlet and gold doublet with some sort of motto stitched across his front, a ruff in a starchy circle around his neck, red breeches with a stripe and an opening behind for his tail. Between his ears, a black velvet hat with red, white, and blue ribbon remnants. I knew this work too. Very professional needlework. First rate. He was fully kitted out as a sergeant major of the mice of the guard. You never saw anything like it. All this scarlet serge and gold braid on a mouse. He had everything but the buckled shoes. I'd often wondered who it was who wore these Halt! He barked, though, of course, I already had. Before I could squeak up or even think, he was whipping forth a businesslike sword from his scabbard. It may have been one half of a human lady's manicure scissors. Daylight flashed on its wicked edge as he drew back for an almighty swing. I thought of the French Revolution and closed my eyes. And that is the end of chapter 5.